The question that I was asked before, Senator, was who would be responsible if something else happened again? And as I was saying is that if the ATSB report has been passed to the New Zealand Civil Aviation Authority and they, taking that up, have identified there's an issue, then it's for their regulations and their change. If that is not in there,
there is no issue in that report for them to identify. That's my exact point.
Then there is no mechanism for the foreign jurisdiction to be aware there is a flaw in their procedure. So
ATSB then, you're the bunnies,
Lord.
and ATSB don't tell the Senator Fawcett.
Say that again, Senator.
You're the bunnies, and because none of this affects you because there's nothing in the report upon which you've got to act, even though it's critical to the crash, perhaps. ATSB, for whatever reason, whether it was just to protect the bureaucracy or it was adjusted by CASA, which is a possibility, didn't mention this critical factor of the non-reporting of the weather change, which, leads to a very big question. Senator Fawcett.
Chair, I think the thing that the committee is struggling to come to is that there's been many witnesses who are pointing a finger of blame at particular incidents. Australia has been a leader in aviation safety for a number of years through its fairly robust adoption of a systems approach, and James Reason is the classic person who's driven that. And so clearly the actions of the pilot in command and his decisions around flight planning and fuel have a role to play. So the actions of the company in terms of their check and training, etc. But each slice of the Swiss cheese, as the James Reason model is often laid out, has the potential to prevent the accident. So the importance that the committee is placing on incidents such as a proactive alert to the pilot that there is now a hazardous situation is not the reason the accident occurred, but it is one of the defences that may well have prevented the accident. And if Australia is to remain at the forefront of open, transparent and effective aviation safety, then one of the roles of this committee is to make sure that our organisations collectively keep working towards having a very open discussion around that system safety approach and making sure that each of those barriers are as effective as they can possibly be. That, I guess, is the intent behind a lot of the questioning this morning, in that we see that whatever else occurred, if the pilot had been made aware proactively about the hazardous situation that now existed, then perhaps he would have made a different decision. Now, should he have been in the first place? Should he have had more fuel? They're all other slices of cheese. We're concerned with this one. So I guess the thing we're really trying to establish is if the ATSB report had a recommendation that said this was something that could have prevented the accident, is it possible to have it put in place for the future, then you would have taken action on that as a matter of course. Is that a correct assumption?
That is a correct assumption, Senator.
And without that recommendation being there, it is a matter of some conjecture at the moment as to whether or not that would or would not have been raised at a future forum. Is that a fair assumption?
That's a fair assumption, Senator.
Okay. The last point I wish to raise then is, under the current model, if ATSB come across something they think is essentially one of those slices of Swiss cheese in the Reason model, and they came across one which was whether or not existing legislation directed a pilot to make a decision that he had to divert if the weather minimas went below alternate or landing minima, they contacted the regulator and they said, hey regulator, here's a critical safety issue, and they thrashed that through. Do they have a similar mechanism where if they see another slice of Swiss cheese, i.e. the pilot wasn't advised of this new hazard, do they come to you as the relevant body? Although it's not your rule set, you are the Australian point of contact to speak to regional players. Do they come to you and say, we think there's an issue here, can we discuss this? Did they come to you in this case?
In this regard, in this particular case, I have to. I don't recall, and I don't think that they did. However, in other instances where things have occurred, they have come to us to ask for assistance, such as some incidents that have happened in Indonesia, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But no one cared about the prang off Norfolk Island.
That's not correct, Senator. I just don't recall the ATSB coming to us to ask us for assistance in this particular jurisdiction.
Air Services?
Nearly 25 years, Senator.
I think you need to change your career.
Can I just clarify that if ATSB did come to you in the same way they came to CASA and said, here is something that potentially could be a barrier to a future accident, that would be significant or that would be sufficient trigger for you to then take that on corporately and see what action you could take with your regional partners?
Yes, Senator.
I'll answer that, and absolutely, Senator.
Yeah, okay. And that's fine. And that's what we're trying to look at here. We're trying to ascertain what are the things that we can drive into the relationships between departments to make sure that we wrap up the system safety to the best extent possible. Okay, no further questions.